Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Jemmita. She is a modern medicine woman, retreat leader, healer, and ceremonialist. Her work involves energy healing, shamanism, and spiritual guidance deeply rooted in the Andean Cosmovision. In this episode, we'll discuss how she helps clients remember their true divine nature and making ancient wisdom accessible in today's world. Jemmita, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Johnny. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
So, Andean Cosmovision, we're going to have to dig into that very shortly here, but how did you, first of all, find yourself on this path?
It's a really, really good question. First of all, it's as strange to me as perhaps it is to anybody. I mean, I'm a blonde-haired, blue-eyed lady from Australia, so the last thing that I thought I would be doing is working with Andean shamanism and adopted into a family up in Chinchero in the high Andes in Peru. For me, really, as a kid, it began with an extreme and acute sensitivity to energy and to beings, I guess, of the unseen world. Like a lot of us didn't really have any mentorship, I guess, to learn how to navigate those realms when I was a kid. And so it was really interesting because when I look back at it, that's where my love for ceremony and ritual began. Somehow innately, I knew how to program energy. So before I would go to bed each night, there would be certain things I'd have to do in certain ways to close portals so that I would be able to sleep, because otherwise I would have visitations from all kinds of beings from all kinds of worlds. It's funny, I sort of reflect on it. If my parents had have seen me doing all of this, they probably would have taken me to the doctor and I would have been put on some medication of some sort. But, thankfully that didn't happen. And I sort of went along my way. I grew up as an only child, so I also had a very deep connection with nature. And, we didn't have iPhones back then. So I was spending a lot of my time speaking to trees and talking to the elements. It's really interesting when I look back now. I'm like, wow, it's something that was very innate within me. And I also grew up in an interesting environment. I sort of say that my shamanic path began when I was 2 days old because my mum and dad were publicans, meaning they owned hotels, pubs. At 2 days old, I was literally, in the sling around on my mum's hip behind the public bar of the pub with the strippers and the old drunks and all of the funky energies that are flying around in that environment. So I often say that was the beginning of my shamanic training to learn how to transform energy, to move energy.
The modern medicine woman, that is a shaman.
Yeah, it is.
So the energy healing, it seems, came before the shamanism, or was that introduced to your life at about the same time?
Yeah, well, I think this is the thing. That word shamanism has such a connotation and such a broad context. I don't use the word much. I use it more now, like I'm more open to using it now, but it sort of put me off a little bit because it gets thrown around a lot. And also, I just never know how to describe what I do when people ask me. I mean, really, I am a shaman. I work as a shaman. What does that even mean? It means learning how to walk between worlds. Learning how to listen to, read, respond, and be in the flow of how you're being guided by nature, by the natural world. Accessing different realms at a simultaneous time so that you're able to travel and do the healings for yourself or for somebody else. So that really is shamanism. So I don't think it's separate from the energy work. It's just a different way of working with it in my experience and from what I understand. But I think the energy stuff, that just came innately and naturally. And I feel like there's so many modalities out there that teach us how to do these things. But actually the traditional shamanic apprenticeship, or certainly what I have experienced and been through, is not something someone can really teach you. There's certain techniques or like recipes in a recipe book, if you like, that are helpful, but then it has to be through your ongoing communion and your practice, particularly with the guardians that you're working with the seen and the unseen world, that bring forth that remembering. In the Quechua language, they call it yuye. It means to remember. It's not really learning anything. It's unlocking this other beautiful word, yache, which means divine intelligence or wisdom, that for me, I really feel is encoded in every single one of our DNA. So even in the work that I do with others, my job is not to be their teacher or tell them what to do. It's to help them unlock that within themselves and find that and remember for themselves. And when you touch that place within yourself, you touch that divinity, then the healing becomes actually quite effortless, can be quite effortless.
You're more of a locksmith than a teacher. You're just helping someone uncover something they already have. You made a good point about the apprenticeship of shamanism, because it's not like you can go to a community college and take a course in shamanism, or can you?
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, I myself run apprenticeships, and I do one where it's largely me, and I'm bringing people from the Andes, my teachers and my brothers, in to teach on that apprenticeship, which is more about facilitation of the work that I do. And then I do a 12-month apprenticeship, which is taught with my maestro Puma. So with my teacher, we do it together, and it's a 12-month thing. So it can be taught. It's interesting because for me, I know he was too, often asked. For me, back in the day, when I began that work and my apprenticeship, I had to give up a lot of stuff. I gave my business away, literally, my relationship. Not to say that people have to do this, but it was a calling. And those things weren't serving me anyway. They were things that needed to eventually go. But when you're called to the path, you kind of get a kick up the bum if you don't listen, and sometimes continuously. Like up in the mountains in Queros, in the traditional way, they say that if a Paco is like the term for medicine man or woman or shaman in the Andes. And if you don't listen to that call, you will get struck by lightning. And they do. I have met many masters. Even Maestro Puma was struck. So traditionally, that's how they were chosen, because the Illapa, the lightning strikes. But in our Western world and our modern world, the lightning strikes in a different kind of a way. And if you ignore the call, the lightning will keep striking and making things hard. Like life becomes kind of challenging for me anyway, until I put my hand up and really said yes. I was often asked, can you teach me? I'm like, God, how do you teach someone how to pray? Like, how do you do this? Then, as often happens for me anyway, a moment will come when the time is right, because I'm a massive, huge believer in synchronicity, where literally the portal will open and I will get the directive on how to do it. And so same with Maestro Puma. And actually I have to say, thanks to that pandemic period that we had, it really shifted the way that we are able to reach people and communicate. When people would ask me to teach them online, I'm like, or do ceremony online, I'm like, you're kidding? We can't. Zoom to me now is a Stargate portal. It's just another portal. And in a way, the technology is taking us back to where we were. It's not something new. It's actually a revisiting or a remembering of something very old, which is that we don't need to be physically present with someone to work with energy and to feel energy. You can do it through the screen. You can do it from a distance.
If we do go back to what I think we were, and we'll get to that in a moment, soon we won't even need the internet and Zoom to communicate, because we should be able to do that telepathically like we were thousands and thousands of years ago. I think it's interesting that shamanism, for one thing, is probably one of the oldest, if not the oldest, mystical practice. What is it, 40, 50,000 years old or older?
Older, I'd reckon. Yeah.
A little bit older? Yeah. Okay. Can anyone learn shamanism? In other words, how to live their life, how to get connected, how to walk in between worlds, as you say, or does it really need a long apprenticeship? Well,
first of all, I think the apprenticeship is lifelong. I don't think it ever stops. It's constantly deepening. Anyone, of course, can learn, but it has to have commitment. It's got to have practice. What is the practice? It's communion. It's really, when you're working shamanically, you have a very powerful team. You know that you are never alone. I'm not talking about humans, although we do have our human family and our human team as well. But there's this principle called Minka, which is community. It's like this team of masters that assist us in our service to our communities, to our families. And eventually it gets to a point where you don't even need to call on these beings, but we are, because we acknowledge and we respect and we honor. But the sitting in the mountains, for me, 10, 12, 15 hours on end per day with no instruction, just go and sit and listen, right? So that is building a communion where the mountain starts to speak to you. The rocks start to speak to you. The earth starts to speak to you. You start to hear the wind. You start to get messages from the sun. Like the clouds and the way they shift and move and the patterns and the shapes, they're telling you something. So codes are in everything, but we have to get still enough for long enough to listen. So the way that you can teach it, I feel, and again, it's a lifelong apprenticeship, is it comes from your willingness to, even if it's just a couple of minutes a day, to gratitude is number one. I mean, the most powerful prayer that there is thank you. So when you are given a synchronicity, or when you're given a sign, or when you're given a message, and you receive that, then always acknowledging it. Because when you acknowledge it and say thank you, they give you more. That's the work. The work is the communion. So you can't just go and do ceremony. And then if you're a true shamanic practitioner, if you want to call it that, like I'm a big believer in walking your talk, right? So you can't just go do ceremony and then do something else in your life. Life is the ceremony. Life has to become the ceremony. So the ceremony, the facilitation of something, whether it's a healing space or a ceremony, for me should become kind of like a yardstick to help you in your own personal development and growth, to close the gap between what is the formal ceremony and the true ceremony, which is that of life. How we show up in ceremony: present, aware, centered, grounded, resilient, strong in our energy field, compassionate, listening, empathic, kind. All of those things we should be able to take into life. In ceremony, energetically, I don't get taken out at all. I can be with somebody in their heaviest, deepest, darkest process. I won't take any energy on. Why? Because I'm conscious. I'm conscious of every single thing that's going on, of how the wind's moving even. Whereas we bump around in life largely unconscious. That's when we take on heavy energy. That's when we take on stuff that isn't ours and claim it as our own and feel like it's ours, especially if you're empathic. So yes, that was a long answer to a question. Anyone can learn if there's a willingness to build that relationship and that communion with the guardians of the shamanic world that are working with you.
You mentioned something about stillness, which I think was really interesting, where if you can just be still long enough, you can start to sense more things. Is there a relationship between the increasing stillness and the raising of a vibration or attaining a certain frequency?
Yeah, that's an interesting question too. I think there's a difference between meditation and contemplation, and both are equally important. That place of manifestation or creation or remembering definitely comes when the mind is still, in that stillness. The contemplation is holding an awareness of something. It's like a moving meditation, right? It's holding an awareness of something that you're working with or working on. For example, with my students, when we're working with their mountains, with their apus, we call them the spirits of the mountains, and we go through a process, because a lot of people haven't ever seen a mountain, right? They've never been in the presence of one, let alone one that really inspires them. So we go through a process to help them to find that mountain, discover the personality of it, commune with the spirit, its name, all of the things. And then their work will be to move throughout their day with a constant awareness and presence of this guardian, and to start a dialogue. When something arises, you ask the guardian, you listen to the answer. So it's this moving stillness. It's kind of the stillness in action. That's one way of doing it. With the medicine work that I do, this is where the gold really is in that, actually, because that work takes people out of their regular environment. That's the number one thing that we need for really true and lasting change. It puts them back into connection with nature, which I think that is the biggest disease on the planet, that we have totally lost our divine connection to nature, in the realization that nature is us. There is no separation, right? And the disconnection from nature means disconnection from ourselves. So really, eventually, I think you realize, for me anyway, and this is not something that you can be shown how to do. It's something that has to be embodied and come from within, and it comes with time and experience, that when you're calling on these guardians, when I'm calling on my team, I'm actually calling back parts of myself. I'm calling those aspects of me home. We're all fractals of this unified whole, and we all have our roles to play. The apus, the earth, the trees, each one of us, we have our roles to play. So we honor and acknowledge, but really it's the Nokankani, it's the I am. There is only one at the end of it all.
So what is the Andean Cosmovision? It sounds like a band name. I was about to ask you if you were a musician.
It is a good band name. So the Andean Cosmovision is a belief system, because there's people that believe it, but it's a philosophy that is based really around a constellation in the very beginning called the Chicana. The Chicana is known in the southern skies as the Southern Cross. Through this constellation, which was kind of their reference point for all life on Earth, it kind of acted like a cosmic map that gave them the geography on the Earth and gave them clues or information, wisdom on how to live the most harmonious life on Pachamama. In the Andes, they have a strong belief that they are from the Pleiades portal, that they've come from another galaxy through the Pleiades. They're also very connected to Sirius and Orion, but particularly the Pleiades, to the point where there's a huge festival every year called Coyoliti, which is up on a glacier, and it celebrates the return of the Pleiades to the night sky.
Really?
Yeah, and it's beautiful because in the Andes, if someone says to you, "Where are you from?" and you say, "I'm from the stars," they won't laugh at you or think that you're new age woo-woo. They're like, "Oh yeah, Pleiades? Of course we are."
Aren't we all from the star beings anyway? There are those people that will say, we are all star seeds. And then there's another camp of thought that's defined star seeds as maybe first generational star seeds that came from however many heavenly bodies are out there. Isn't that true, though?
For me, it's true. For me, I feel it in every cell of my being as being true. I mean, as a little girl, my mum still reminds me of this now. We used to sleep outside. I grew up in a place called Perth in Australia, very, very hot, and we didn't have air conditioning. And so we would sleep outside at night, drag the mattresses out and all sleep on the grass. I would point to the Pleiades and say to my mum, "Home?" And I had no reference point. Like, I didn't know. My mum would say, "That's the Seven Sisters, darling." For me, it's just an innate knowing. Having said that, I am also super grounded because I know also that my decision to come here and my role to be here is to be in service to Pachamama and our family here and have fun. I came down, there was good stuff on the brochure, there was chocolate, there was waterfalls, there was all the things. I often joke, when I looked at the brochure, I'm like, woo, yeah, Earth's looking good. But I also came down to be in service to Pachamama. And that isn't even something that I came to do. It's more something I believe that we come to be. We have a gift and we can emanate it. It doesn't matter what role you play. And people get so caught up, I have to be a shaman, I have to be a healer. No, you don't. You can be an accountant or a banker. It's how you interact. What are you giving out? What energy are you sharing with people? Are you uplifting or are you pulling down? That's your true service. It's not about the ego's role of I do this, I do that. If you're in a purpose and your outer purpose at some point marries up and you're expressing yourself in a healing art or something, awesome. That's what you were meant to do, but it doesn't have to be. So
you mentioned your team a little while ago, and you also mentioned that you knew what your mission was. So does that reference a knowledge or an experience with a space that is in between incarnations, or is that something different? I feel that when we leave the planet, we don't take anything with us. I don't have the thing of the karma where there's something else to reconcile or to do in terms of that. I believe that whatever we receive while we're here, that's our legacy. We plant it into the earth, we leave it behind. And when we come in clean. I think we come in with a memory for sure. Definitely. I think we come in with a memory, and I don't tend to listen to anything that anyone else has to say. I never have. I don't like information coming from the outside so much. I prefer to allow it to arise within me because then it's embodied. It feels true for me, regardless of whether it's true for somebody else. I really, really believe that I knew what I wanted to come here to master, not to fix, not even to do, but what I wanted to master. And I also knew that as soon as I went through that birth portal and there was this great splat of energy through experiencing that first trauma of actually coming through the birth canal, that I would forget. The purpose would be to find my way back to that original memory, that original intention for being here. I would eventually get to a point where I knew that I had programmed the whole thing to happen exactly in a way that it meant to. But I would also get to the point when I realized that I knew that I could change it because I would step into my creatorship. So I don't feel like it's something that I carry with me from lifetime to lifetime. I feel like I come in at a different trajectory point every time. Come in consciously, forget, remember, and hopefully what I would love to master this time, and I think one of the things I set for myself was to remember while I'm still in the body without having to leave to remember. And that's happening. I think that's happening for a lot of people. What does that look like at the end of the day?
I don't know. I think it looks like a combination of an extremely deep inner peace. I guess you would call that an awakening, being in an awakened state. And at the same time, being able to manifest. And I'm not just talking about material things, but I'm sure you're experiencing it too, how quick the manifestations are now. It feels good. It feels natural to be in that state. Just like you were speaking about telepathy too. I believe we're moving towards that too, because it's natural. So it's like a return to the truth of who we really are, before everyone has their different ideas about what happened, but before the DNA was changed, we're returning.
When you say remember who we were and telepathy is natural, the reason I brought that up is because I've had several people that do have memories of ancient civilizations. I mean, like Atlantis and Lemuria, which is supposed to be even older. They've all concurred that things like telepathy were normal.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've had experiences like that, but if you tell us that telepathy is normal, which I don't think it's normal for everybody. I think people can do it, but the other 99% of the population has no idea how that's done. Have you had a glimpse of any of the ancient civilizations or?
Yes, I have. One of the biggest Lemurian portals is Lake Titicaca. I mean, the Aymara people there firmly believe still now that they're descendants of the Lemurians.
Lemurians?
The Lemurians.
What is it about Peruvians anyway? Because they have the Nazca lines. Yeah. They had, I believe, an airline that has a logo that says the world's oldest airline, which is a tip of the hat to the ancient spaceships.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
What is it about that place?
I spend a lot of time in Peru. I mean, at least 3 months every year, apart from the pandemic year, 6-8 months before that. And I've been to a lot of places, and a lot of places repeatedly too, because these portals, these places, they're programmed for certain things. They were programmed by the masters. When I turn up, there's been a year in between, and so I'm different. So it's always interesting to me to see how I relate to these places when I arrive. Coming back to your question, the Peruvians, the Cosmovision is really, again, coming back to that, this knowing that the traditional people have, that we are star beings and that there was and still is a communion that is happening with our cosmic family. Like they literally call it the cosmic family. So when they see a star, they don't just see a star, they see a sister or a brother or an uncle or someone is speaking to them. If the star's blinking, then that's a message. It's like a Morse code. So they're deeply connected still now, to the point where there's so many examples I can give you. But the Mayu, which is the river of the Urubamba River, and they've named it after the Milky Way because it's a mirror. It's an exact mirror image. If you follow the Urubamba River, it follows the river of light. And so where they built all of their temples were along the constellations of that river. And you have, like Intihuatana. Watana means to tie. It's like a lineage of light. It's to tie the sun to the temple, to tie the moon to the temple. So there's this innate and phenomenal communion, but it's like a library. They see it like a library. So they've never really lost in the high Andes through their traditions. Of course, they have the conquistadors, but even that has an amazing story behind it. And why the people are so generous with their wisdom is because that was a part of what had to happen. They don't judge what happened. They don't even judge the people that brought all of that stuff in, because it was written in from their original prophecies that this was a part of the awakening. This is a part of what had to happen. In terms of the telepathy, going back to the Lemurian portal of Lake Titicaca, which the Aymara people are still so dialed in. They even have a name for the dog people, the Anunnaki. That's in Aymara. They call it the Anunnaki.
Is that the same thing as the Anunnaki, or is that different?
I'm guessing it's a version of or the same thing, but their whole creation story involves the dog people called the Anunnaki that were star beings.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It just blows my mind. Now, these are people living in the middle of the lake, barely even got internet, let alone watching any new age. That's in their cosmovision. So they have the story about these beings. Years ago, when I was in Lake Titicaca, I was in a temple called the Pachamama Temple on an island called and I went into a bit of a sleep in that in-between world. And the next thing, I'm in this sea of blue, like just blue, 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 blue everywhere. I'm realizing that I'm in water, and I'm like, where the hell? And I'm like rushing through this kind of portal of blueness, and I pop out in the jungle. And when I arrive in the jungle, there's a trail and there was an elder sitting there chewing coca leaves, and he gave me an offering called a kintu, and he gave it to me to have as an offering to enter this place. And it was a pyramid that was made of pure gold. It was huge. It was rising out of the jungle. And what was incredible was all of the stones, the rocks and the boulders were made from crystal. They were pure amethyst, emerald, quartz, and the whole rock, instead of having rocks like we do, everything was crystal. And when I went into the temple, the people, the feeling was like indescribable. It was the most serene vibration. The frequency was so high. The beauty was absolutely astounding. And I watched as the people went and stood in front of each other and just placed a hand on each other's heart. And they were like nodding as though like we are having a conversation, but there was no words. They were communicating through this telepathy.
During a meditation, or where were you physically when this is happening?
I was in the temple, and it wasn't a meditation. It was that liminal state between sleep and wake. It was like a lucid dream, but I was very awake and aware. I lucid dream a lot, but I was very awake and aware of where I was and what was going on. So there was no mind. I wasn't controlling that vision. I was being taken into it. And then the interesting thing is there was a man and a woman. They were kind of like the leaders, like what we would think to be a king and a queen, but they didn't have that same hierarchy. They were just revered and loved and so beautiful. And when I saw them, I walked over and I said, "Excuse me, I'm through my telepathy. Where am I?" And they said, "Paititi," out loud. And I went and straight back through this blue. And then I like woke up and I was like, whoa. So Paititi is this mythical city. It's actually what the conquistadors came looking for, because in Paititi, they called it the City of Gold. El Dorado, it was known as well. People think that it's a mythical place. Some people think that it's a real place that still exists. People believe that the last refuge of the Inca, when the conquistadors came, they fled also to Paititi. It's like a Shambhala or Shambhala. But what they said to me is that Paititi is existing in another dimension and you access it through the portal of your heart.
I was just about to say that. It's not here on earth. It's somewhere else.
Exactly.
Like heaven or the spiritual realm is in another dimension.
Yeah, honestly, I've seen it so many times in temples in the Andes where I see the temple existing on a parallel dimension. So what you see in the rock, you see the physical, what's left there of the, I don't like to call them ruins because I don't think they are. They're a place of masters, but you see the physical thing there. And then when you go into these deep states, time after time, I see this exact thing existing on another dimension, and that this physical one here was a place for the masters to connect, travel, commune, travel. Like Wakarapucara is like the United Nations of Star Nations. You've never seen anything like it. It's built on top of a horn rim coming up through the valley. Each one of the temples faces a different constellation. It's just incredible what is there.
Who are the masters? Because you're talking about masters and portals, ascended masters, or are they a different, or are they star beings?
There's so many, I don't want to say levels. When I say the masters, the ancient masters, you have the beings that walked here on the earth physically, that were in direct communion with the masters that are the Apus, which are the original elder beings, star elder beings that were petrified or enchanted into stone to guard the earth. You have the galactic masters, the masters and priestesses of light, which for me are like a galactic council. It comes back to not somebody telling you who they are, but it's your communion with them and how you're in communion with them and how you receive them. That's important because it's going to be different for everybody. But for me, when I talk about the ancient masters, I'm talking about the priestesses that had this continuous communion and connection that hadn't forgotten yet. They knew what was coming. So a lot of these temples were built and programmed for now, not even for then, for now, for us.
Really? The temples. These are temples all around the world, not just in South America.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. I always thought it was interesting the way the pyramids all over the world had similarities. They weren't just there to store grain, were they?
No.
Something to do with energy grids all around the earth.
Definitely.
How do you really explain this to the layman? Portals, and ancient masters, the mystery of the Incas and all the other really cool stuff that originates in South America for some reason. What I'm trying to figure out is when we have people that have glimpses into ancient civilizations, sometimes it's through channeling, sometimes it's through a vision. So going back to that topic, have you actually seen visuals of what it was like in some of these civilizations 10, maybe 20,000 years ago?
Multiple times.
Really?
Multiple times. And it's really cool for me because, as I said, I don't like to get too much outside information. Because I don't want anything influencing what's coming through for me. So many times I've had very clear visions and directives from the masters of what these particular places were and what they were used for and how life was then, and remembering and information and wisdom and things for me to do and all of the stuff. But it blows my mind because then at some point someone will come and be like, oh, did you see ancient aliens on Gaia? It was like in this temple. And I just laugh because I'm like, well, yeah. The wisdom is universal. It doesn't belong to anybody and it can be accessed by anybody. So my feeling is that all of the sacred sites on the planet have been coded very purposefully, very specifically. And whether you are open and realize that you're receiving the coding or not, you will receive it. If you arrive at these places, you have been called and you are not there for no reason. I see people all the time at Machu Picchu, for example. They do this bloody 3-day trek, the Inca Trail, which was never done in 3 days, by the way. It was done in a minimum of 3 months to 6 months because it was a spiritual pilgrimage. But people run it, they do it in this short amount of time. And then they arrive at the top and they go click, 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 and then they're out. It's like something to tick off the bucket list. So you could be in judgment of that and be like, oh my God, why would you arrive here just to do that, to tick it off your bucket list? But just from the arriving, they're being activated. Just from the arriving, they're receiving, even if they don't know it. It's in the cells. For some people, it will unravel. How I ended up in Peru was Machu Picchu. I didn't know that I was called to Peru. I was going because my Colombian boyfriend back in the day wanted to go and work with medicine in Peru. And I was like, I want to see Machu Picchu. But as soon as my feet hit the ground in Cusco, I burst into tears. It was like a tidal wave of memory coming back. Shocked me, like it was really incredible. See, the masters I'm speaking of, they knew it. They got me there. They put the seed, even the orchestration of it is just so divine, even down to the partner wanting to go there for the thing, and every little bit of it, there is no mistake. It's all drawing you. So even if somebody walks into a pyramid just as a tourist with a camera, they're receiving the codes from that pyramid. They're receiving the activation regardless.
Anything else that we need to know, at least for tonight, because I'm pretty sure we're going to have a part 2.
Yeah, this really lights me up. I really feel that these times that we're in, Johnny, people are being called to these places and called to these sites and called to this work because it was always part of the plan, and the remembering is there. And all you need to do, don't get in your head about it. Close your eyes, put a hand on your heart, put a hand on the stone, or visualize it, breathe with it, and just ask and listen. Simple words. When the higher self speaks, when the masters speak, they don't speak in blah, blah, blah. They speak in simple directives, simple words. So just through that practice, we can tune in more to this wisdom and into ourselves and into our own inner wisdom.
Okay.
Especially.
I believe you have a gift for our listeners tonight they can get from your website.
I do. I have a course. It's called Be the Crystal. It's about a resilience training for empaths. It's working with the energetics. I'd love to gift it to your listeners.
Jemmita, thanks again for joining us tonight. In the meantime, how can our listeners find you online?
They can find me on Instagram at Anchoring the Light. My website's the same. And if you want to receive that gift, just send me a DM with the word resilience and you'll get the link for it.
You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please consider subscribing. You can find more info at closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.